Story 1, The Woman in the Mirror, Madison, Wisconsin. They say you shouldn't look too long into a mirror at midnight, but no one ever tells you why. In the summer of 2021, I sublet a small studio apartment in Madison while interning at a campus research lab. The place was weird fourth floor of a century-old brick building with warped floors, creaky plumbing, and a built-in vanity mirror in the corner I never used. It always gave me a strange feeling like someone was standing just behind me when I glanced at it. My roommate joked that the building used to be a funeral home, but I thought he was messing with me. On the second night there, I came home late from the lab, exhausted and sweaty. It was 11:57 p.m. when I saw something strange. The vanity mirror had fogged up like someone had just exhaled on it. I hadn't touched it. I leaned in, wiped the glass, and saw my reflection, but it blinked late, a second too slow. Then the clock on my stove turned to 12:00. The lights flickered. I spun around, nothing. I laughed it off and went to bed. But every night after that, at exactly midnight, the mirror would fog slightly. Then came the whispers, soft, unintelligible, echoing from behind the glass. I started recording them on my phone, but nothing ever played back. Just static. Then the dream started. I'd wake at 12:03 with cold breath on my neck and see her in the mirror, a tall, thin woman with no eyes, just bruised sockets, standing exactly where I stood but turned slightly toward me. My therapist said it was stress, lack of sleep. But on the seventh night she moved, not just in the mirror, in the room. I heard bare feet slap against the wood floor. The light in the kitchenette exploded. When I turned, she was there right behind the vanity, staring through the glass, her hand pressed against it from the other side. I threw a towel over it and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I covered the mirror completely with duct tape. At midnight, the tape peeled itself off one strip at a time. I ran. I didn't pack. I didn't care. I stayed with a friend until the sublease ended. Years later, I passed by the building and saw the new tenant in the window. She was staring at the vanity. I don't think she blinked. Story 2, The 1201 Knock, Flagstaff, Arizona. I've always loved staying in cabins until the night one knocked back. Back in 2020, I took a solo trip up to Flagstaff after a rough breakup, hoping a weekend in the pines would clear my head. I booked a secluded A-frame through a friend nestled just outside Coconino National Forest. It was beautiful, with thick tree lines and no neighbors for miles. The owner left a note on the counter, "Firewoods out back. Don't answer knocks after midnight." I laughed, assuming it was a joke or some desert folklore. The first night passed with nothing but wind and raccoons outside. But the second night was different. I was reading on the couch when the clock struck 12:01 a.m. and someone knocked at the door. 3 soft knocks. I froze. No headlights, no sound of a car, just those slow knocks. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The knocks came again. I texted my friend who owned the cabin, half joking, "You send someone to test me," no reply. Then I heard footsteps, bare feet padding slowly around the cabin. The boards on the deck creaked one at a time, circling. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and killed the lights. When I peeked out the window, I saw nothing, just pine shadows. But the knocking moved to the window, then to the back door, always in threes. At 12:17 it stopped. I didn't sleep. The next day I called my friend. His voice was weirdly calm. "Did it knock or scrape?" he asked. I said, "Knock." He just said, "You're lucky. Don't stay past Sunday." That night I left my phone recording. At 12:01 exactly, the knock started again, louder this time. My phone captured it, but when I played it back, the audio had something extra, a voice whispering between each knock. "Let me in." It was high-pitched, not quite human. I left at dawn. Months later, I asked my friend what would have happened if I'd opened the door. He only said someone did once. I found the door still swinging. No one inside, just wet footprints on the ceiling. I've never been back to Flagstaff, and every night I check the clock before bed. If it's close to 12:01, I leave the lights on. Story 3, Midnight in the Morgue Basement, Atlanta, Georgia. Hospitals are creepy enough in the daytime. But if you've ever worked the midnight shift, especially in the bowels of an old city hospital, you'll know there's a silence deeper than quiet, something that presses against your ears like you're underwater. In 2019, I worked the night janitorial crew at Grady Memorial Hospital in downtown Atlanta. Big place, thick history, and lots of strange rumors. Most of them centered on the sub-basement, the old morgue wing that hadn't been in use for years after the hospital upgraded their facilities. It was a place people avoided unless absolutely necessary. But protocol was protocol, and once a week, every Thursday night at midnight, one person had to sweep through, verify all doors were locked, and make sure no squatters or rodents had crept in. No cameras down there, no reception, just the old fluorescent bulbs and your own nerves. I always brought a flashlight. The hallway down there was narrow and smelled like metal and old lilies like flowers left to rot at a grave. At the very end of the corridor was room B12. That door was always locked. Always. But that night, as I rounded the corner, the door was slightly ajar, like it had been waiting for me. I should have called security. I should have walked away. But something about the open door pulled at me like a dream you can't wake from. The room was freezing cold, far too cold for a place with no active refrigeration. My breath clouded instantly. In the center of the room, under a flickering ceiling light, was a gurney. A body lay beneath a stained white sheet. Only problem was, this morgue hadn't stored bodies for nearly a decade. I stepped in slowly and the door slammed shut behind me. I jumped, turned, flashlight shaking in my hand. No wind, no draft. The handle wouldn't turn. And then I heard it, the soft screech of metal against tile, the sound of the gurney shifting on its own. I took a step back. That's when the lights died. Complete blackness. Then something touched my hand, ice-cold fingers, fragile and papery, brushing along my knuckles. I screamed, dropped the flashlight, and when it flickered back on, I saw the sheet on the gurney now on the floor. The gurney was empty. I backed against the wall, heart pounding, and that's when I saw the first figure in the doorway, then another and another. They didn't move like people. They hovered, their faces shrouded in shadows, only their eyes visible, sunken black pits that pulled the light out of the room. I recognized one of them, Cynthia, a nurse who had gone missing 6 months earlier after a night shift. They never found her body. Her picture had been on the staff board for weeks. She looked at me like she still remembered pain. Then they all vanished like smoke. The lights came back on. The door clicked open on its own. I ran. Up 3 flights of stairs without stopping. I tried to quit the next day, but the supervisor calmly told me room B12 doesn't exist anymore. got walled off in 2012. I checked the hospital blueprints myself. There was no mention of B12. But I took photos that night, ones I still have. In one of them, in the mirror behind the gurney, there's a man in scrubs with his throat cut standing directly behind me. Only problem is I was alone in the room. Or so I thought. Story 4, the farmhouse phone call, Keokuk, Iowa. It started with the landline ringing at exactly 12:00 a.m. on a phone that wasn't even plugged in. In 2022, I was house-sitting for my aunt and uncle in Keokuk, Iowa, while they visited their daughter in Oregon. Their place was a lonely old farmhouse about 15 minutes from town, the kind you imagine in classic ghost stories, peeling white paint wind chimes that play on their own, and a windmill that spins even when the air's still. I was used to the quiet. At least I thought I was. The first night was uneventful. I fed the chickens, locked the gate, read a book. By midnight, I was brushing my teeth when I heard the sharp, shrill sound of a phone ringing downstairs. They didn't even have a landline anymore, just used cell phones. Confused, I followed the sound and found it coming from an antique rotary phone on the wall in the dining room, one that had been there forever but hadn't been connected in years. It rang exactly 4 times and stopped. I stood there staring at it, heart thudding. I thought maybe I was overtired. Maybe some old wiring buzzed to life. But when I picked up the receiver out of instinct, I heard breathing, slow rasping. Then a whisper, "You're not supposed to be here." I dropped the phone and didn't sleep that night. The next day I called my uncle. He just chuckled and said, "Yeah, the phone acts up sometimes. Don't worry, it's just old wiring." But something in his tone felt rehearsed, like he'd said it before. That night I unplugged the phone from the wall entirely. Midnight came and the phone rang again, unplugged. I didn't answer. But I heard footsteps upstairs. I crept up with a bat in my hand, but no one was there. That's when I saw the mirror in the hallway. On it were smudged handprints, child-sized on the inside, and scratched into the glass were the words, "She's in the cellar." I didn't even know they had a cellar. I found the trap door beneath the pantry rug, sealed with a heavy iron lock. The next night, the power went out at 11:59 p.m. Dead silence, and then the phone, ringing louder than before. I stood frozen, then slowly picked it up. The voice whispered again, "She's in the cellar. Let her out." I gathered every ounce of courage I had and opened the trap door. The smell hit first, wet earth rot, something else. I climbed down with a flashlight, the old wood creaking under my weight. At the bottom, I found a dirt room with old toys scattered in the corner and a small bed. Shackles on the wall, scratches all over the beams, and a picture nailed to the post. A girl, maybe 9 or 10, in a white dress. Written on the back, Emily. 1936. My stomach dropped. As I turned to climb back up, the flashlight died. In the dark, I heard it, a soft humming, a lullaby. Then small footsteps. I never ran faster in my life. I sealed the door with furniture and didn't touch it again. When my aunt and uncle returned, they didn't ask any questions. They didn't act surprised. But that night, I checked my voicemail. There was one new message. A girl's voice humming the same lullaby and whispering, "You opened the door. I'm not alone anymore." That was the last time I stayed in Keokuk.